So one of the reasons that Ken Shamrock disappeared, one of the reasons that Scott Hall disappeared is we talked about the company going broke in July. August is when the company did like legitimately go broke. They ran out of money. There's a name we haven't mentioned yet that we probably should have mentioned at this stage, and that's Health South. They were the secret investors at the time of TNA. People didn't know who was who was the financial backing behind TNA. People thought it was just the Jarretts. It turned out they did have a financial backer, Health South, run by Richard Scrushy, who I actually interviewed at one stage when I was actually thinking of writing the book, which I still haven't done. And when I talked to him, I was like, so why did you actually invest in TNA? And there was a couple of reasons, some of which didn't quite add up, but some of which made more sense. The first one, he was like, oh, it would be good marketing for Health South if we were in bed with this hot wrestling company and we'd be able to promote Health South, which didn't quite add up because they were a silent partner in the beginning. So it's like, it's not marketing for you at all. You weren't actually mentioning anything regarding being a partner of TNA.
I guess the alternative would have been like, that would have been the long-term plan. Change it up and to make them a forefront of the promotion.
The second one was one that made a little more sense, that the Health South would then provide the health services, because they were a health services company based in Birmingham, Alabama. They would provide the health services to all the wrestlers. So if the wrestlers got hurt, they'd make some money back because they'd provide all the like healthcare and whatnot to the wrestlers.
Wrestlers with healthcare in 2002.
Yeah, and it never panned out in typical fashion with wrestlers and healthcare. And the third one, the one that makes most sense, honestly, and he was very open about that, is he just liked Jeff Jarrett.
Well, Jeff Jarrett's probably an incredibly likable guy when he's in the boardroom, when he's in the marketing office and he's doing a pitch. I'm sure it's very easy to like one Jeff Jarrett.
So yeah, he literally just said, I liked Jeff Jarrett, I believed in him, I wanted to support him, so I did. And relative to the amount of money that Health South was making, the investment, which I think was $1.1 million, according to Jerry's book, was relatively pocket change compared to everything else that was going on in that company. So they're like, yeah, sure, why not?
Just a small loan of $1 million.
Yeah, wouldn't it be nice to be like, oh yeah, that's not that much money, it's fine.
Just a little pocket change on my my vanity project with Jeff.
There is an important note that might inform a little bit more of it, in that Richard Scrushy, the head of Health South, has been indicted for fraud multiple times.
Okay. Now I'm starting to see the pocket change aspect.
He has been criminally charged for defrauding Medicare people. He was in the news in August 2002 for conveniently selling a bunch of Health South shares shortly before a Medicare contract was dropped. So that would be thoroughly inside trading. And yeah, he went to jail at one stage. So.
Allegedly. Now, I don't see the problem with a little bit of insider trading. If you have the knowledge, why not use it?
Well, to be fair, it's not allegedly. He was sentenced to 6 years and 10 months in federal prison in 2007.
I'll just make sure, was chucking allegedly on there just in case.
But yes, so Jerry Jarrett actually speculates in his book that he never ran the investment by his board, and that's why the reason they actually went broke in August of 2002 was Health South gave him a call. It's like, hey guys, we're actually pulling our investment. Which is the point at which the company did actually run out of money because Health South was funding the company. And when they said, we're not funding this company anymore, the company was actually out of money. There's a full section in Jerry Jarrett's book, which is fascinating. They play a very high game of high stakes like poker with Health South, where he talks about, they go into a board meeting and they're basically like, we are willing to declare ourselves bankrupt, where you will be the ones that will be liable for the $1.1 million you invested, plus the $400,000 letter of credit to In Demand. You would be hit in the pocket for $1.5 million plus another $70,000 of expenses that we have currently out. And he literally went into that boardroom meeting with Health South. They didn't have a hand to play. It's like, we are broke. If you're like, we're pulling their investment, we're like, oh well, then we have to shut the company down. Sure. But apparently his high stakes game of poker worked, where they gave him an extra $150,000 to fund through 2 more shows, which is the reason the last 2 shows were taped back to back. The August 21 and August 28 shows were taped on the same night, and they were off on the first show of September because they did an X Division special. They were always supposed to be off on the second show of September because it fell on September 11th, which would have been the first anniversary of 9/11. So they were never going to do a show then. So they cut the first show in September. They were never going to do a show on on the second week of September. So they were finished on the 21st of August and essentially were not producing another show until the 18th of September, which is basically a full month. So they had a full month once Health South funded that August 21 taping to find new money because Health South was done with TNA.
The fact that this company is alive in some fashion is truly remarkable. From the beginning, the world was against them.
There was the wide-scale fraud from Jay Hassman.
Allegedly.
There was the Health South pulling funding after only 2 months of the company existing. Their partner pulled their funding. And then the company somehow still survived, because that's what TNA does.
In many ways, a company that can be compared to a cockroach. And mostly, in fact, for the fact that they managed to survive everything.
Listen, the company has embraced it. There's literally a pay-per-view called Hard to Kill now, so...
I think all it took for, like, Impact to sort of gain its notoriety back with people was just an acknowledgement of what it was. If you just go out there and go, yeah, we know TNA, let's go. And everyone's like, oh, alright, they understand now. They're not pretending that it's not TNA.
A little bit of self-awareness.
Yeah, that's all. I think all companies could do with a good dose of self-awareness.
So Health South agreed to fund the company, but they do have a condition. They want to increase the amount of equity they have in the company to 40% until they are paid back in the 1.1 million that they gave in. They hadn't actually paid out, I believe, the entire 1.1 million. They were paying it in installments per TV taping, and they basically called them on the 15th of August being like, we're done, we're not giving you any more. So that's what the big meeting was about, that it's like, you should really continue at least funding us through these tapings, which was for 150,000 more. And they did, but as I said, with the condition that they wanted 40% of the company now, which they were perfectly willing to give away because if the company was about to go bankrupt. 40% of nothing is still nothing. They're perfectly fine giving away 40% of nothing.
It's pretty remarkable how at this stage, the Jarretts were like pretty secure in what happened regardless. Like, even if it went bankrupt, it really wouldn't be too much off their backs.
Well, Jerry was quite worried because he was like, it's either going to be the best thing I ever did or I'm going to go broke. Because Jerry was like, I have another 170,000 that I could, in theory, put into the company. If Health South did pull all of their contributions, Jerry was like, I have 170,000 that I have put away that I could put it in. But the question is it worth it? Thankfully, he didn't have to answer that question for himself because Health South eventually ponied up the 150k that allowed them to do that August 21 taping. And then they had as is the story of TNA, a stroke of bizarre luck.
The stroke, brother.
Ah, there you go. That's where the Jeff Jarrett thing. It's actually funny. You mentioned on the watch along, you were looking at Jeff Jarrett's face, being like, "That's just a guy who looks worried."
Yeah, I forget which. It would have been 8, right?
Yeah.
There was this one segment where Jarrett was out there and just like he looks like he's trying to go out there and be Stone Cold Jeff Jarrett, the Jeff Jarrett that we know and love and respect as the ace of the company, but you could just tell on his face that like he wasn't certain about everything going on at this point. Like, he looked like a man who had maybe, like, lost some sleep over the last couple of weeks. He looked like a man who had $1 million of debt.
Which he did. And he looked like a man whose finance was suddenly pulled and was in deep trouble.
But fair play to him. He went out there and he still didn't do the job, but he did a job.
He still went out there and hit people with chairs.
Hey, I'll go $1 million in debt just to hit people with chairs, too.
So after that August 19 meeting with Health South where they got the extra funding for the August 21 tapings, they basically had two options. They were desperately trying to syndicate TNA internationally. They were trying to sell TNA in international markets, particularly the UK. Didn't have much luck with that. But they also went to their PR firm, their PR advisor, Trifecta Entertainment, run by none other than Dixie Carter. And they were just like, we've got to update Dixie on, the state of things with Jay Hassman. We've got to update Dixie on the state of things with Health South so our PR people know what's happening and know how to actively manage this situation. And Dixie was just sitting there. They had no idea who Dixie Carter was. Jerry mentions this in his book, that he's just like, he just thought she was a nice southern girl running a PR firm until she finds out that her dad runs a $1 billion energy company. And Dixie is like, oh, hey, my dad might actually be interested in this. And that's a story we will continue talking about in September.
So yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, was it Dixie being like, hey, I'm the goddess, I'll come in, I'll save your company right now? Or was like the Jarrett smelling blood and just, oh, someone with money, let's go.
Well, according to Jerry's book, he did not know Dixie had money. They didn't know who Dixie was, because Dixie was just a relation Jeff Jarrett had in the music industry. I think they lived in the same apartment complex at one stage. I remember seeing that story on the History of TNA Year 1 DVD, where they were just loose acquaintances and they just knew her for the PR firm. So they like, yeah, Dixie will do our PR, why not? And they went to her, she was like, oh, my dad runs this gigantic energy company. I'm super rich. He watched all of the shows and liked them, which, you know,
What?
debatable. Like the quote in Jerry's book is just like, Dixie said that her dad watched all of the shows and knew that we knew wrestling. And I'm like,
I want to see Dixie's dad just hanging out, watching puppet matches, freaking out like us. I hope I don't know if Dixie's dad's alive. If he is in that event, feel free, sign up to the Patreon, $10 tier, get the watch-alongs with us. You can come on the show. Hell, you can even buy the show. Whatever you want to do.
we should definitely get Bob Carter on for
Yeah, let's invite Bob Carter on. We'll ask him, you know, what did you think of those early shows? Because you watched them all. And also, will you please finance us?
Listen, it's like Ted Turner. Everyone's like, when will Ted Turner get back in the wrestling industry?
No, when will Bob Carter get back in the wrestling biz?
But yeah, that's the story we'll continue covering next month. The increased interest in Panda Energy in TNA and the savior of TNA, basically. I don't think it's a surprise that TNA does not go bust here.
What?
I know, it's like the podcast ends in September.
God, I thought this podcast was going to be over by then.
Well, on the bright side, there's barely any shows in September.
That is a bright side.
Our next episode is going to be very short because there's only 2 episodes to cover. But we will cross that bridge when we get to it. Basically, that going bust influences pretty much everything else we're going to talk about for most of the big stories of the month. Ed Ferrara was, you'll notice, no longer on these shows.
I'll tell you right now, for about half of a show, I did not notice.
Neither did I.
When they cut to the announce table, I was like, wait, Ed's not there.
I was like, wait a minute. Mike and Don, isn't something missing here?
I literally started like rolling back in the show to see if like there was an angle where he got taken out or something.
Because like he didn't call most of the, well, not most, half of the NWA-TNA pay-per-view number 8 because he was in the Dup Cup match.
But then he came back the week after.
Yeah, so he came back on August 14th and then he was gone for good on August 21. As it turns out, like the company line at the time when he left was like, oh, you know, he's going to pursue other interests. As it turned out, the company had no money and there was a chance he might not get paid, so he bailed immediately.
Which, again, fair enough.
Yeah, in the book, he was like, Jerry was like, Jeff Jarrett was dumb to hire all his friends, and now he's learning how business really works. It's like, nah, pal. If you're not going to pay somebody, they have every right to bail.
I don't know if you managed to catch my little Ed Ferrara note that I found while searching through the Ed Ferrara Wikipedia.
I didn't. Please tell me.
In July of 2013... Ferrara obtained his Masters of Fine Arts degree in creative writing from the University of Southern Maine's Stone Coast program. Ferrara currently resides in Florida, where he teaches creative writing for entertainment at Full Sail University.
My God, that's why NXT is the way it is.
Yeah, Ed Ferrara's back in the biz, brother.
Do you think he just pokes his head in every so often? It's like shaking my head. This is no Dup Cup.
No, he pops his head in for a second and he approves. He's like, this Karrion Kross shit's the coolest shit I've ever seen in my life.
Look at my kids. Look at what they're making.
But yeah, basically what I saw from Big Ed was, for the most part, he was just teaching creative writing classes.
So that's the creative endeavor he went to pursue after he left TNA.
And yeah, basically, yeah, Big Ed out there in Full Sail. That's why the parking lots are so dangerous.
Oh no.
Ed Ferrara's just out there, willing and ready to spear someone at any moment.
He is fond of spearing people and groping people based on his television character.